A relationship does not always break with a shout. Sometimes it breaks with a pause, because what if the most frightening part was never the public moments, but what happened after the cameras stopped? Tonight, young Mei Mei's emotional words are being discussed everywhere. Not because she attacked anyone, not because she demanded sympathy, but because she described something far more unsettling. The feeling that the person you love is slowly becoming someone you no longer recognize. Stay with me, because this story is not just about celebrity life. It is about emotional distance, unspoken pressure, and the quiet moment when you realize the old version of someone may already be gone. This story lands differently because it refuses the easiest label. Jealousy is a convenient headline. It's also a shortcut that stops people from listening. What young Mei Mei seems to be describing is not possessiveness, but a deeper kind of alarm. The moment you sense that love is still present in name, yet no longer present in spirit. She does not sound like someone fighting for attention. She sounds like someone fighting for emotional safety. There's a particular pain in watching your partner do their job, while you quietly reassure yourself that you are mature enough, strong enough, modern enough to handle it. You tell yourself that professional closeness is not personal closeness. You repeat that sentence until it becomes a prayer, and then one small detail breaks the illusion. Not something dramatic, not something scandalous, just a look that lasts a second too long, a silence that feels too heavy, an absence that doesn't match the room. That is the deeper truth here. She is not competing with another person. She is competing with a version of him that keeps slipping out of reach, and that can be far more frightening than jealousy. What unsettles audiences is the idea that the real fracture happens in the space nobody applauds, after the director calls cut, after the laughter fades, after the crew moves on. The world assumes the boundary returns automatically. Role ends. Life resumes. But what if it doesn't? What if the performance leaves residue? What if the body goes home, but the mind stays behind? The aftercut problem isn't about a single moment. It is about the slow erosion of a line that used to protect the relationship. When that line weakens, everything becomes confusing. A gesture can be explained away, then explained again, until explanations feel like excuses. A partner starts living in a permanent in-between state, not fully working, not fully resting, not fully present, and the person waiting at home is left with a cruel dilemma. If you speak up, you risk being called controlling. If you stay silent, you become an audience to your own loneliness. This is why the story feels intimate rather than sensational. It is the quiet horror of ambiguity, the fear that you can't prove what you feel, yet you can't unfeel it either. The most haunting antagonist in this narrative is not a rival and not a scandal. It is pressure, the kind that cannot be photographed, the kind that doesn't trend until someone breaks. Pressure without a name is dangerous because it hides in everyday behavior, shortened patience, forced cheerfulness, late nights justified as normal, and a constant insistence that everything is fine. For public figures, that pressure often arrives in layers: work expectations, reputation management, the need to be dependable, the fear of disappointing fans, the habit of smiling through fatigue until fatigue becomes a lifestyle. And then there is the quiet loneliness of being surrounded by people, yet not feeling truly known by anyone. Young Mei Mei's account, as it reads, suggests she saw only fragments at first, enough to worry, not enough to understand. That is how pressure wins. It does not announce itself, it accumulates. It trains someone to hide. It teaches them to be impressive rather than honest. In that context, the relationship becomes collateral damage, not because love disappears overnight, but because pressure slowly consumes the emotional energy love needs to stay alive. There is a particular kind of isolation that comes from being told your pain is imaginary. When a person reaches for language to explain a feeling and is answered with ridicule, the wound deepens. Not being believed is not just social discomfort, it becomes a psychological prison. You start editing yourself. You second guess your instincts. You wonder whether you are the problem. And if you're trying to protect a relationship, you often choose silence, because silence feels safer than being misunderstood again. In this story, the loneliness is amplified by the public environment around celebrity life. People watch clips, interpret smiles, and build confident opinions from seconds of footage. Meanwhile, the person living the reality cannot produce evidence of emotional distance. They can only describe it, and descriptions are often dismissed as drama. That dismissal is why audiences respond so strongly. Many viewers recognize the pattern. The moment you speak, you are labeled. The moment you are labeled, your words become invalid, yet the pain continues, unchanged. This is where the narrative becomes more than gossip. It becomes a portrait of emotional invalidation and the quiet courage it takes to say, "I know what I felt," even if you refuse to understand it. Coldness implies intent. Numbness suggests survival. That distinction matters because it changes the moral framing from accusation to understanding. Someone who turns numb is not necessarily choosing to hurt others. They may be losing access to themselves. Numbness is what happens when the mind is overloaded for too long, when emotions become too expensive to feel, when the nervous system decides that shutting down is safer than breaking down. In relationships, numbness is devastating precisely because it looks like indifference. It steals the small, ordinary warmth that makes love feel real, the morning check-in, the meaningful eye contact, the spontaneous tenderness. The partner who is numb may still be polite, still be functional, still say the correct words, yet everything feels hollow. It is like hugging a memory. This is why young Mei Mei's fear resonates. She is not describing a dramatic betrayal. She is describing the grief of watching a person disappear emotionally while still standing right in front of her. And because numbness often arrives quietly, the partner at home carries a strange guilt. You miss someone who hasn't left. By focusing on numbness, the story becomes more responsible and more human. It asks a harder question. What do we do when love is present, but presence is not? The real message here is not that love fails easily. It is that love needs consciousness to survive. The ongoing decision to notice, to listen, to repair. Perfect love is a fantasy. Conscious love is work. The courage to name what is happening before it becomes irreversible. This story resonates because it shows a familiar tragedy. Two people can care about each other and still lose each other, not through betrayal, but through depletion, not through hatred, but through emotional absence. That is why the audience feels a lingering heaviness, because the villain is not a person. The villain is the gradual forgetting of presence. Conscious love asks different questions. Not who is to blame, but what is happening inside us. Not how do we look, but how do we feel when the door closes. It requires boundaries that protect the relationship from the outside world, and honesty that protects the people inside it. If there's hope, it lives here. When you stop treating emotional distance as a minor inconvenience and start treating it as a signal to rest, to speak, to seek support, to reconnect before numbness becomes normal. That is the deeper takeaway. Love does not need perfection. It needs attention. If you watched this far, thank you for staying with this story in a thoughtful way. Here at Update X24AH, we don't just chase headlines. We look at the human emotions underneath them with respect and care. If you want more updates and deeper storytelling about celebrity relationships, hidden pressures, and the moments that the cameras don't fully capture, please subscribe to Update X24AH, turn on notifications, and leave a comment with your perspective. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.